What happens when the weapon a rival feared most suddenly becomes real? For a long time, Chinese military planners studied India's defense programs the way a chess player studies a rival's every move. They watched, they calculated, and they assumed they understood every piece on the board. But recently, something shifted. India unveiled a new weapon system that experts say directly challenges assumptions Chinese strategists had relied on for years. This was not a small upgrade or minor improvement. This was a leap that caught defense analysts across the region off guard. Reports suggest that military planning rooms in Beijing had to be quietly reassessed once the full details became clear. Analysts who had spent years mapping out predictable timelines for India's weapons development suddenly found their charts and projections outdated overnight. Some describe the moment privately as the kind of surprise that forces an entire department to start over from scratch. This is the story of how a weapon meant to answer years of pressure and threat finally became reality. Stay till the end, because the final capability of this system is the part that worries strategists the most. To understand why this moment matters, we need to look back at the pressure India had been facing for years along its northern and eastern borders. For more than a decade, India watched as its neighbor invested heavily in advanced missile systems, stealth aircraft, and rapid military modernization. Every new base built along contested regions, every new radar installation, every new military exercise sent the same message. Pressure was mounting, and India needed an answer that could not be ignored. Diplomacy alone was not going to be enough to change the calculations happening on the other side of the border. India needed a capability so advanced, so precise, and so difficult to counter that it would force a complete rethink of the regional balance of power. This was never going to be an easy path. Building such a system meant years of failed prototypes, funding battles inside the defense ministry, and constant skepticism from critics who doubted India could ever close the gap alone. But slowly, quietly, piece by piece, the program moved forward, even when public attention was focused elsewhere. Let's begin with what makes this new weapon system so different from anything India has fielded before. Unlike older systems that relied heavily on foreign components and licensed technology, this weapon was developed almost entirely through indigenous research. Engineers focused on combining speed, precision, and stealth in a way that had never been achieved together in a single Indian system. Early testing reports suggested speeds that put the weapon well into the hypersonic range, fast enough that traditional missile defense systems would struggle to react in time. Traditional defense systems calculate a target's path based on speed and trajectory, giving defenders precious seconds to respond. A weapon moving fast enough removes that margin almost entirely, turning what used to be a manageable threat into something far more dangerous. What happened next shocked analysts who had assumed India was still years away from fielding this kind of capability. Some of the same experts who had confidently written that this technology remained a distant goal for India were now issuing quiet corrections to their earlier assessments. Defense conferences that once treated India's hypersonic ambitions as a talking point for the future suddenly had to address it as a present reality. Another major piece of this puzzle is precision. Speed alone does not make a weapon system truly dangerous. What turns speed into a genuine strategic threat is the ability to strike an exact target with almost no room for error. Reports indicate that this new system uses advanced guidance technology capable of adjusting its path mid-flight, reacting to countermeasures in real time. This means that even if an opponent tries to jam or confuse its targeting system, the weapon can correct itself and continue toward its intended target.
For military planners on the other side of the border, this single detail changes everything about how much confidence they can place in their existing defense networks. Systems that were considered reliable just a few years ago now face a threat they were never designed to stop. Defense budgets built around older assumptions suddenly needed urgent review, with some regional governments reportedly accelerating upgrade programs that had been moving slowly for years. A weapon that forces this kind of reaction is not just a new tool in a country's arsenal, it is a message that reshapes how seriously that country is taken on the world stage. But precision and speed together were still not the full picture. Next, we turn to why the timing of this reveal carries just as much weight as the technology itself. Global attention in the region had been building for months, with repeated tensions along contested borders drawing headlines around the world. India's leadership understood that revealing this capability during a moment of heightened attention would send a message that no diplomatic statement could match. Military signals like this are rarely accidental. They are carefully timed to reassure allies, caution rivals, and reset assumptions about what a nation is truly capable of achieving. By choosing this exact moment, India ensured the message would be impossible to downplay or dismiss as routine testing. This changed the entire tone of regional military discussions almost overnight. Closer to the very top of this story is how quickly the reaction spread beyond just military circles. Defense journals that rarely focused on India's weapons programs suddenly dedicated entire analysis pieces to understanding the new system. Independent researchers combed through satellite imagery and test footage, trying to piece together specifications that had been deliberately kept vague in official statements. Foreign military attachés reportedly requested clarification through official channels, seeking to understand exactly how this new capability might affect existing regional agreements. This kind of widespread, rapid reaction rarely happens unless something genuinely significant has occurred, and this reaction confirmed just how seriously the development was being taken. Social media discussions among defense enthusiasts exploded within hours, with grainy test footage circulating faster than official channels could respond to questions. Even casual observers who rarely follow military news found themselves drawn into a story that clearly carried weight far beyond typical weapons testing coverage. But that was only the beginning of the ripple effect. Another piece of this puzzle involves how Chinese state media and defense commentators responded once the news became impossible to ignore. Early public statements downplayed the significance of the announcement, describing it as routine testing that posed no real strategic concern. However, several defense analysts pointed out that this kind of dismissive language often follows major military developments that catch a rival off guard. Behind the scenes, according to multiple regional defense reports, military planning committees were reportedly instructed to reassess existing deployment strategies along contested border regions. Quiet reassessment, rather than loud public reaction, is often the clearest sign that a message has truly landed. Public statements remained calm and measured, as expected from official channels trained to avoid appearing rattled. But the private reassessments, the quiet shifts in deployment planning, and the sudden interest from foreign defense attachés painted a very different picture beneath the surface. Closer to the very top of this story now is how this development reshapes the broader strategic balance across the entire region. For years, regional security discussions assumed a certain gap between China's rapid military modernization and India's more gradual pace of development. That assumption shaped how neighboring countries approached their own defense planning, often leaning towards closer cooperation with the more dominant regional power. This new weapons system forces a recalculation of that entire approach.
Smaller nations in the region, previously cautious about appearing too closely aligned with India, may now see renewed value in stronger defense partnerships. A single demonstrated capability can shift diplomatic conversations just as powerfully as years of negotiation, and this appears to be exactly that kind of moment. Defense ministers from smaller nations in the region reportedly began scheduling private discussions with Indian counterparts, eager to understand what this new capability could mean for future cooperation.
None of these conversations were announced publicly, but their frequency alone signaled a meaningful shift in how the region viewed its options. And now we reach the capability that ties this entire story together, the one that worries strategists the most. This weapon system was reportedly designed with a survivability feature that allows it to be deployed from multiple platforms, including mobile land launchers, naval vessels, and potentially aircraft in future variants. This flexibility matters enormously in modern warfare. A weapon tied to a single fixed launch site can be tracked, targeted, and neutralized before it is ever used. A weapon that can move, hide, and launch from unpredictable locations becomes almost impossible to fully eliminate through a first strike. This is the same principle behind survivable deterrence that major nuclear powers have relied on for decades, and India's new system appears to bring that same philosophy into a new generation of conventional and strategic weaponry. This is the real reason the regional military planners has been so measured and careful. It is not indifference, it is the sudden realization that India has closed a technological gap many assumed would take another decade to bridge, if it closed at all. So what does this development actually mean for the region's future balance of power? It means India now possesses a demonstrated capability that directly challenges assumptions about who holds technological superiority in this part of the world. It means future border negotiations, military exercises, and regional security discussions will happen with this new reality quietly factored into every calculation. It means smaller nations across the region now have a genuine alternative when considering which major power to align with for their own defense needs. For decades, many of these nations felt they had limited choices, often forced to accept terms almost entirely by larger, more established powers. A credible alternative changes negotiating leverage completely, giving smaller countries room to seek better terms, more balanced partnerships, and greater respect in future agreements. The world spent years assuming India's military development would remain steady but unspectacular, always trailing just behind more established powers. That assumption is now completely outdated, replaced by the reality of a nation capable of producing genuine strategic surprises on its own terms. Military historians will likely study this moment as a case where patient, unglamorous investment quietly outperformed flashy short-term announcements made by louder, more attention-seeking programs elsewhere. It is a reminder that lasting strategic advantage is rarely built overnight and is almost never won through headlines alone. Every scientist who worked through setbacks on early prototype failures, every engineer who solved guidance problems that had stumped previous programs, every official who continued funding a project with no guaranteed timeline, all of them are part of this achievement. This did not happen through luck, and it did not happen quickly. It happened because India refused to accept a permanent technological gap as inevitable, because Indian researchers pursued solutions that outside partners were unwilling to freely share, and because political leadership maintained consistent investment through years when results were far from certain. The old regional order assumed technological dominance would remain concentrated in the hands of a single rising power. The new reality now includes a genuine rival capability, one built through patience, indigenous research, and a refusal to be permanently outpaced. Every successful test flight, every corrected guidance failure, every year of quiet development behind closed doors, all of it tells the same underlying story. The story of a nation that refused to remain permanently behind and chose instead to close the gap on its own terms and its own timeline. And right now, quietly, without dramatic announcements, India has demonstrated a capability that forces a rewrite of regional military assumptions. This weapon was not built to provoke conflict. It was built to ensure that India would never again negotiate from a position of technological weakness.
It stands as a quiet warning to any nation that assumes patience and persistence cannot eventually overturn even the widest technological gap that once seemed impossible to close. This is not the end of India's strategic rise. It is only the beginning of a much larger shift, one where India stands not as a nation playing catch-up, but as one capable of setting new benchmarks in advanced military technology. Every nation watching this transformation closely, whether ally or rival, now understands that underestimating India's long-term commitment to scientific independence carries real strategic risk. That single lesson, more than any specific weapon or missile, may end up being the most lasting legacy of this entire moment. The years ahead will likely bring further refinements, additional variants, and expanded deployment across multiple branches of India's armed forces, each one building on the foundation laid by this breakthrough. What began as a program shrouded in secrecy has become one of the clearest signals yet that India's defense ambitions extend far beyond simply maintaining pace with its neighbors. And when future analysts look back at this moment, they will likely describe it as a genuine turning point. This was the moment regional military planners stopped assuming India would always remain a step behind and started treating it as a nation capable of setting the pace itself. There is something deeply significant about a country that endured years of pressure and quiet dismissal, only to respond not with words, but with a capability that speaks entirely for itself. Every researcher who stayed committed through failed tests, every officer who trained for a system that did not yet officially exist, every leader who defended a costly program for years of skepticism, all of them are woven into this achievement. None of them sought public credit, and most never will, yet their combined effort quietly reshaped the strategic map of an entire region. This is bigger than a single weapon system unveiled at the right moment. This is the story of a nation proving once again that patience, investment, and quiet determination can close gaps that once seemed permanent and unbridgeable. It is proof that no matter how far behind a nation appears at any given moment, sustained commitment to science and self-reliance can eventually rewrite the entire story. And that is a story that will shape the region for years to come. Every alliance formed in its shadow, every defense budget rewritten because of it, and every negotiation conducted with its existence quietly in mind, all of it will trace back to this single moment when assumptions finally caught up with reality. Years from now, when the full history of this era is written, this quiet breakthrough may well be remembered as the turning point that changed how an entire region measured strength, respect, and true independence.